What is up, everybody? And this is going to be a very exciting upload for those who love the tropics here. Not too long ago, just over a month ago, I did my first thought on the hurricane forecast for the Atlantic Basin. But now I'm actually going to be doing my actual preliminary hurricane season forecast, giving you guys obviously some maps, my overall forecast, as well my numbers and predictions at the very end of the video here. So this is going to be very exciting. Of course, it is preliminary. We're still pretty far, a couple months from the actual start of the hurricane season. So a lot of this won't be extremely accurate. It's just a preliminary forecast. All these maps you see are just preliminary based on what long range models show and the current status we are right now with this La Nina slash going towards neutral. But before we get in the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, specifically if you like tropical content. As we continue to go on, we will get more tropical updates as we get closer to June and as well summer. As well, if you really enjoy the video in general, smash that like button. And if you want to get notified when I post, stream, or make a community post, I would recommend you guys hit that bell icon. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So to start off with the season SSTs or sea surface temperatures for the Northern Atlantic, I think it's going to be a very large variety in the vicinity of very warm, or at least above average temperatures for the SSTs as a result of these potential carrying on La Nina as we get throughout the season. There is going to be very warm waters throughout the whole North Atlantic. So if you are in that orange, or not really, but in that orange color across the Atlantic, I think that's kind of where we could see anywhere from kind of near average to possibly above average in general. So a few degrees Fahrenheit or a couple degrees Celsius above average as for specific time periods. Like we could have areas of very warm waters, but really I'd say like a degree or three of Fahrenheit above average, really. But getting towards the red color, I think that's kind of where we could see way above average SST temperatures, and we're already seeing some pretty well above average SSTs across portions of the Western Caribbean at the moment. And if that carries on throughout the season, I think that could very well be the same scenario where we have way above average SSTs. As well, I really do see a potential very warm MDR region. I do think obviously it was very quiet last year. I mean, SSTs were very warm, up to 30 degrees Celsius, up to the peak there, which is slightly above average. But it was really quiet last year due to the sheer and as well with all the moisture in the very dry monsoon season. But I think that's going to be a very different scenario. MDR is going to definitely be, in my opinion, I think at least active in general or slightly above average, and partly because of the way above average SSTs. Of course, SSTs are definitely by far one of the hardest things to predict when it comes to a preliminary forecast for hurricane seasons. I mean, SSTs are just almost impossible to get correct as they change rapidly. Obviously, the neutral stage or La Nina converts back, or at least the La Nina watch comes back, or at least La Nina status comes back during the summer. Everything can be completely different. So that's kind of just based on what global models show and possibly the status of where we're at staying. Season activity in general. So I think we're gonna be seeing overall a above or and overall, I think we're gonna be seeing an active to above normal hurricane season this year. So we do actually have in the red color, we do actually have active. So if you're in the red, if you are just in the coastal areas of the red or in the areas highlighted in the red for the Atlantic Ocean, I think we're gonna be seeing anywhere from slightly above or slightly active to generally active. So it's gonna be basically slightly active, nothing too crazy. Not as active as possibly like way above our season. I think there is just gonna be some activity within the region here, but obviously not gonna be the worst of it this season. So if you like across portions of Texas there, the Bay of Campeche, portions of Cancun and Western Caribbean, I think you guys can definitely see some activity. However, it's not going to be as potentially active as last year, where we saw multiple major hurricanes within the region, the Western Caribbean or um, within the Cancun region. But I do see possibly the MDR region being quite active, specifically if you're in that red area, kind of the central portion of the MDR. Definitely looking at some potential activity on the early half and early and as well middle half of the season. In the purple color, we're seeing kind of an average, so it's going to be kind of basically average. So mainly for those areas, the average is going to be very little to no storms within the region or landfall or in the region. So obviously, if you're like in the red, doesn't mean you're gonna be seeing active landfall. It just mean within the general area highlighted in the red, we could see some active activity. Same goes for the average. So let's say your average is one landfall. Doesn't mean exactly you're gonna get a landfall. It just means you're gonna be average activity within that general region. I hope that makes sense. But in the purple, so including much of the Mid Atlantic and Northeast coast, I don't see anything too crazy this season. I think it's basically be average. I don't see a drastic change compared to your average type of activity, but obviously that could change as we get towards closer towards the actual season, and where I think we could possibly see our most active amount of activity or most frequent storms or hurricanes, whatever, I think is going to be in that pink color coming all the way from the MDR to portions of the southeastern United States here, and as well portions of the eastern and northern Caribbean. So you can definitely see that I'm seeing potential MDR season like 2017. I definitely think there is a possibility for a very active MDR with multiple storms coming off within a time period of a few weeks here, and I just see a pretty significant monsoon season this year. Very little shear, going to be providing a very little amounts of Saharan dust. I think we're going to be seeing just storms just rolling out, these low pressures just becoming tropical within the MDR, and then making their way frequently across the southeastern United States. And that's also going to be putting threats towards areas like Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and as well a portion of the Bahamas here, and less of a Western Caribbean approach. I mean, you guys are still under the active in the Western Caribbean, but I don't think you guys will get the bullseye like we saw in 2020. Going towards a season hurricane number or probability, actually. So, looking at the season probability for hurricanes, and so the pink equals very likely, the red equals likely, and the orange equals low. And I want to say this before I get in any details. Let's say you live in Alabama and you're on the red, doesn't mean you're gonna get an actual landfall. It just means if there's a pink, wherever that pink is, it means there's a chance, there's a very likely chance of a hurricane being within the area. So you can see not every coastal area is in the pink. You see, we have pinks all the way outside the middle of the Atlantic. That just means there's a chance or a very likely probability within some point this season that there could be a hurricane within this general vicinity. So it doesn't mean there's actually going to be a landfall. It just means it's going to be within the vicinity. Same thing with the red and orange. It means there's either a likely, lower, or very likely chance of something within the area. It does not mean actual landfall. There could be landfall, specifically if in the very likely area. It just means, I hope that makes sense. It's very hard to explain, I guess, or I'm just making it too complicated to explain. But let's go ahead and start off with the orange here. So the orange equals a low probability of hurricanes within the area or hurricane landfall. So, like I said, it can be both. So that's going to kind of be more towards the far southern Caribbean there, to portions of the northern coast of South America, and as well far southern Central America, portions of Bay of Campeche, and portions of Central America, including areas like Belize. You guys, I do think you guys have a pretty low chance of getting an actual hurricane within the area, or actual hurricane landfall. Same goes for areas such as far much of eastern coast of Florida and as well Georgia. Of course, you guys very unlikely to get any hurricane landfall. There's definitely gonna be a little bit higher of a chance of actual within the area, but overall this year I think it's gonna be a bit lower. But of course, Southeast Florida is definitely not in the low. You guys are going to be in the very likely. So kind of have a sharp cutoff right just north of West Palm Beach. As well, another very large area, of course, across much of the Northeast, New England, and Nova Scotia. You guys obviously do have a low chance of having a hurricane within the region or actual landfall. In the red, we have a likely chance of getting a hurricane within the area or actual landfall. That's going to be a bit more widespread across much of the much of the western Atlantic. You see much of the Caribbean into the western Gulf of Mexico, and as well a large region between the Bermuda region and just outside the middle of the Atlantic. And that also includes as well portions of the western coast of Florida. So you guys definitely have as well a likely chance of getting a hurricane within the region or a landfall. And in the pink, we have a very likely chance of getting a hurricane within the area or a landfall or hurricanes. It can be plural. And that's going to include portions of the northern portion of the Caribbean. So, like I said, potential if it is an MDR season, between July and July September, there's definitely be some more northern track storms like we saw with Laura or Isaias this year. There's going to definitely keep a close eye for areas such as southeastern Florida, portions of the north central Gulf of Mexico, and the northern and northeastern portions of the Caribbean. So keeping a close eye on for areas that are hard hit by last year, such as Louisiana, Mississippi, and as well not too hard hit areas such as Florida. So kind of watching out for a variety of areas that either got impacted or not impacted last year. Looking at the seasonal storms or number of storms for the season. So this is tropical storms, obviously it just storms in general. Obviously this one's going to be definitely the hardest to give numbers because it's either too high or too low, or it seems very inaccurate. Again, it's still months out. I mean, the season ends in November, so we're talking up to over 6 months out technically, but the season starts on June 1st, but we get advisories as early as May 15th. So if you're in the yellow, there's a chance of 1 to 3 storms. Of course, not doesn't mean 1 to 3 hurricanes. It just means storms in general that get named. As well, it's going to be 2 areas of 1 to 3 storms. There's one. Um, again, same thing goes for this. Doesn't mean landfall. It just means within the area. 1 to 3 potential storms within the area across much of the northwestern portion of the Atlantic. There, from the northern MDR to just kind of just in the middle of nowhere, all the way up to the New England coast. So there could be 1 to 3 landfalls in New England, or there could be 1 to 3 storms in the area, like we saw with Faye, or like we saw maybe with Dolly, that it kind of did not make landfall, but it was within the area. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. As well, another area in the southern Caribbean, as well portion of the Western Gulf. I think we guys can have 1 to 3 storms within the area, or landfall. Obviously, depends. In the red, I think we have 2 to 4 landfalls or 2 to 4 storms within the region. So there could be a storm just off the coast of eastern Florida, and that'll count as a number. Or it's just maybe it hits Florida, and that obviously counts as a number for storms in the area or landfall. So 2 to 4 for portions of the far western MDR, much of as well getting towards portions of the southeastern coast, including the Carolinas and Georgia, and as well portions of the Central Caribbean. And then where the very interesting number is 3 to 6 storms within the area, possibly whether it's a landfall or just within the area. Uh, we have a pretty large 3 to 6 all the way from portions of the Eastern Caribbean up to where we got hit very hard last year in the north central Gulf of Mexico. So if you live in Cuba or you live in Mobile and you see a trend of pinks and pinks and pinks and pinks, again, guys, this is preliminary. It's still very far out, so do not stress out from this. Please do not stress out. Then now looking at the season or the number potentially of hurricanes throughout the season within an area, and this one's definitely what's probably one of the hardest methods as well to not make numbers too high, but also not downcast, but I think possibly happens. So if you're in the gray, basically I think there's gonna be 0 hurricanes in the region. This maybe it is possibly a chance for maybe zero to one hurricanes. Of course, this will rapidly change as we get throughout the season. So I think it's a very large area of zeros within portions of the central and eastern MDR, much of the northern Atlantic, like there in the middle of nowhere between Africa and America, and as well, kind of just if you are on the coast of the gray area, or just within much of the Atlantic, if you see gray, that's where you could possibly maybe see 0 to 1, maybe more likely 0 hurricanes, but there's a chance maybe for 1 hurricane within the area or landfall. You got thinking, oh, but Adrian, you said big storm for the MDR, right? Or a big season for the MDR, but you have 0. Well, I think there's going to be multiple storms developing off the MDR, but you can kind of see where the yellow is, where we have a 0 to 2. I think they'll kind of become late bloomers, and they won't become hurricanes so much. And they get to the western MDR. So obviously, we still have some pretty significant storms possibly to develop, like tropical storms, but I really think they won't become hurricanes so much later. Where that yellow region. Speaking of yellow, yellow is 0 to 2, so it can be 0 hurricanes in the area or landfall, or 2 hurricanes in the area or 2 landfalls, or 1. It's kind of between that range. And we have a lot of a larger range here, kind of scattered throughout the coastal areas. That's including portions like Jamaica and the south central portion of the Caribbean, a little region there. We got hit very hard in Central America, a pretty significant area, of course, across the western Gulf of Mexico. Another very large area across portions of the just general middle nowhere of the Atlantic and portions of the Eastern Caribbean, and two smaller areas across one out in the coastal Carolinas and one there in northwestern coast of Florida. So in those areas, I think there's possibly zero to two hurricanes landfalls or in the area throughout the season here. So definitely keep a close eye on portions like Carolinas, of course, and maybe as well Eastern Caribbean. Now we get deeper into the shades now. Red equals 2 to 4 hurricanes within the area or 2 to 4 hurricane landfalls, and that's gonna be including much of the Central Caribbean portion of the Bahamas, where we saw similar tracks there with the Western Caribbean into portions of far western Cuba, all the way up to Texas and Louisiana. So there could be 2 to 4 storms in the area, or possibly 2 to 4 hurricanes, landfalls all together within the red. So we can get one in Haiti, one in Texas, one in the Bahamas, and one in Puerto Rico. And that can all count out to the 2 to 4. And last but not least, in the pink colors, we have 3 to 5 hurricane landfalls within the area, or 3 to 5 hurricane landfall. And that's going to be including portions like the north central portion of the Caribbean, all the way up to portions of the north central Gulf of Mexico, including as well not just Gulf of Mexico but southeastern Florida. So it could be a pretty big, significant year for you guys down there in Florida. And then this is my overall forecast for this season. So I do have a storm creator across the MDR, multiple storms to develop, whether it becomes a tropical storm or even become a hurricane later on once it gets towards the western Atlantic. So definitely be, in my opinion, an MDR year. Not throughout the whole year, of course, but at least a lot more active than it was last year. Kind of more like a 2017 potential season there. Doesn't mean I've seen Irma or Harvey, but I do see some storms like long track that come from the MDR. And the purple, I see a wild card. So what wild card means it can be potentially active, inactive, or it can be average. Like that's kind of the area where I had average. So it's gonna kind of be really all over the place. Nothing too crazy. I mean, I don't think I have a definitive answer for those areas under the wild card. I think that's gonna be a very hard region, and I'm gonna have to get a lot closer to get a better idea of what I think could happen there. And the red, I think we got just in general an active season. Doesn't mean it's gonna be way above average or slightly below average. I think it's generally gonna be an active season. Whether that active means 2 storms for you, whether it means 4 storms, I think it just means look at your average and put like slightly above numbers than that. So potentially including the Western Caribbean and as well the Western Gulf of Mexico, including Texas, Louisiana. And the yellow, we have little storms. So yes, if you guys looked at my maps, I do have those areas under active, but little storms in these areas are still pretty active. I mean, 1 to 2 storms is still active if you think about it within these regions. Last year was definitely special. We saw multiple storms moving within these areas under the yellow. I mean, last year was very special. I mean, we had to have storms since the MDR wasn't really producing too much. We just saw storms blowing up in the Western Caribbean out of nowhere, and it just kept on going here. So last year, if you compare it, you're like, oh, but you're saying little storms, but you also have them under active. I mean, last year was special. That is not the average at all for the Western Caribbean or the Southern Caribbean. So little storms, I can see a few storms within the area altogether. Maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 storms. Again, it's gonna be there's gonna be a very little storms compared to last year. That I guess I can say that. And the gray color down the far southern Caribbean and far southwestern Atlantic near Panama. I see no storms within the area or landfalls there, so you guys don't worry about anything. And in the pink, I have the bullseye. So if you're in the bullseye, please don't freak out right now. I just have pretty good confidence that you guys will definitely get hit, at least within this area, whether it's Louisiana, Haiti, within that region, the yellow, including much of the Caribbean and South, and portion of the Gulf of Mexico, specifically the eastern half. I would just keep a close eye because you guys definitely have, in my opinion, the best chance for some really active seasons. And oops, let me actually get ahead and get this text out. So this is my what I have so far. I don't think this is much different than my last forecast more than a month ago. but I do think there's definitely a chance for 16 to 22 storms overall in the season, up to 8 to 12 hurricanes, and possibly 3 to 5 major. So I don't think that's too different than my last one. I think I changed the storms a little bit, but definitely I do see a slightly above average to above average season in general, with a pretty good amount of hurricanes and specifically a pretty good amount of storms. Before I actually end the video, I just want to show you guys what AccuWeather is showing. They're showing a 16 to 20 storm, so they're also showing a slightly above average season as well. They're also showing 7 to 10 hurricanes, not too different than mine. Mine's a little bit higher. Also showing very similar 3 to 5 major hurricanes. Major hurricanes, that's kind of what I have actually exactly. I think that's a very good prediction by the AccuWeather company and organization. And ACE actually not, it actually ACE is they're showing pretty high A's, up to 160 A's. A pretty big range, 120 to 160 A's, and 3 to 5 direct U.S. impacts. Now I think that's a little bit on the lower side, but obviously I keep consider that this season won't be as crazy as 2020. At least that's what we think. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was a very, I hope the wait was worth it, and I will have another one of these videos out possibly by the end of this month or possibly in the beginning of May. Hope you guys enjoyed it and stay safe and see you guys later.